We don't have to wait till we die.
To be a really good person, I need to be funny.
So
there's so many things. And it's like, that was the coping mechanism, was they made the decision like, well, if that's what everyone wants, if that's what men want, that's what women want, that's what everyone wants, well then how am I supposed to survive?
And I was like, it was like this, if you don't leave, you will die. And it was like someone telling me this.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a very powerful moment of like, are you going to choose to live or are you going to choose to die in this relationships? And that's why I just think relationships are so important.
Yeah.
In reflection of how we really get to grow and perceive ourselves. So welcome to Spill the SpiritualiTEA, real and raw conversations about the grit and the grace on living soulfully. I'm really excited. This is my first episode and thank you for joining us. I have had this in my heart for a really long time to start a podcast, as anyone that knows me loves to know that I have a good chat. And so I feel like with the conversations that I have with my clients and my friends, I really wanted to bring that rawness and that vulnerability into a podcast where it wasn't really scripted and it wasn't necessarily talking about what we do, but how we've really navigated the challenges with grit a lot of the time and grace to not fall into those heaps and have a higher trust, I would say, in where these challenges are guiding you and how you navigate through it. And I'm lucky enough to have on my first podcast my favorite person in the world, Dannie French. And I'll tell you a little bit about her first before I go into my part of Dannie. But Dannie, for me, is pretty special. But Dannie is an emotional freedom coach, inner child specialist, EFT and Matrix Reimprinting practitioner, yoga, and a Reiki practitioner. She supports spiritually conscious mothers who are ready to heal toxic relationships and stop people-pleasing using a scientifically backed energy psychology technique called Matrix Reimprinting. So you can finally feel safe, connected, and satisfied in your relationships. So for me, Dannie is an amazing practitioner and we're doing a lot of co-facilitating together now. But Dannie came into my field when she breathed with me and then we ended up coaching together. And straight away there was just this knowing. There was this, oh, we've met before, you're my soul sister. She was so vulnerable, so open. And what I loved is it's kind of like you're a mini version of me when I was younger. It's like a lot of the way Dannie deals with things. We're both man-gens and the way we navigate our challenges is very similar. We've got to go all the way into it, feel ourselves all the way through, and she's a Pisces too. And then come all the way back and go, right, now I'm here. So there's this beautiful grace and acceptance in our friendship and relationship that I feel has grown over the time. And I am just super excited to have you as my first guest.
Oh, thanks, babes. I love you so much. I really do think that we are definitely soul sisters and we've done this together before along the lines of wherever that was. And yeah, I do, the more that we get to know each other, the more we see so much within each other's, like I see myself in you and you see past versions of yourself in me. So I love that so much because it means that I feel so seen and heard from you. And yeah, I'm just so grateful to be here on your first podcast.
Oh, no. Finally. It's been like brewing inside of me. I'm like, I'm ready to speak. I'm ready to be seen. Let me do it. But I think it was really pivotal that I had you on because we've really started a journey together, working together. But I've also held you through, the later version of your path. Obviously, your path started before, we connected. But I think I came in the crux of the chaos that you were navigating at the time. And it was so beautiful because it really showed me that how much you were prepared to back yourself. Even though you didn't know, the depth of the pain that you felt really reflected to me, honestly, a lot of the depth that I felt because I feel so deeply. So to watch someone else feel like I do was a real mirror, like going, okay, so I'm not the only weird one out here. Someone else feels as deeply as I do and really needs to work through it through the body and come to the other side. So where did it kind of, I suppose, what was your start that you recognized you were different? Was it something that was early on in childhood? That was
so I knew very early in my childhood that I was somewhat different. I didn't know how to explain that or how to voice that, or I didn't have any context around it. But if I could explain it, the thing that really made an impact for me is watching my parents as a very young girl and just noticing how they interacted with each other. And I was just like, this is not right.
Yeah.
And as such a little girl, I knew that that was not right in the way that they were not connecting.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I would look at other people's, like my friends' parents, and although now looking back, they weren't connected either, but they did hold hands, they did cuddle, they did kiss, they did give affection. But from my perspective as that little girl watching my parents, like, I knew there was something wrong, something was different. I knew deeply that it wasn't meant to be like that, and I couldn't understand why.
It's more of an energy thing, an emotional thing than like you said, looking at one set of parents to the other, you realize that they weren't necessarily connected. And even though they were affectionate, what you were reading or what you were understanding and perceiving was so much deeper than that.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, it was definitely, I was reading the energy for sure. And I didn't come to know about that part of myself or that gift of mine until, recently in the last few years since my son's been born. But I just knew that there was something different there that didn't feel good, didn't feel right. And I was trying to understand it at such a young age. And I was just like, I didn't know how to understand it. So I guess I just had to, feel my way through that.
Create your own perception of it.
Yeah. And, I formed a lot of beliefs, obviously, around what I saw at home and the behaviors I saw. And and it's interesting being an adult now, going through and coming up against
and being a parent.
And being a parent, and being a wife, and then coming up against all those things that I saw in childhood, the behaviors, the disconnection, all those sorts of things that I saw and witnessed in my childhood, starting to take place in my adult relationships. And I'm just like, oh,
it is, isn't
what?
it?
I mean, like, I knew this was not right as a child, but now it's happening to me. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why is this happening to me? And I think there's a lot of things that happened in probably just before high school, where I started to really devalue myself in the face of how I positioned myself to my best friend. Yeah. And she was, the very, beautiful, blonde, blue-eyed, skinny, tall. She was also a dancer with me as well. And so it was like, I specifically have a memory, and my husband's in this memory, believe it or not, which is really interesting. Because she used to date Dean.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so basically, I think at that time they must have been dating. And so in that moment, I can literally recall it like it's happening in front of me right now. And she's sort of standing in front of me and I'm back here. And in that moment, I had made the decision that, okay, well, I'm not as pretty as her and I'm not as skinny as her, so I'm not good enough. And then that sort of was when I think all of the heavy belief systems around my value really anchored in.
Yeah.
Because then I was just like, okay, well, if I'm not pretty enough and I'm not skinny enough, well, how am I going to cope with that? What the fuck do I do? Okay.
Yeah, who's going to love me?
Yeah, who's going to love me? Because obviously she's getting all the attention and all the love and she's like the popular one. And I was just like, so where the fuck do I fit in all this?
It's funny how we perceive ourselves, especially as women, in competition. And it's always, and we've had this conversation a lot around the recognition of a man's value. And I see this a lot, and then we seem to then, when we are in that competition, we end up being in competition not really with the other person, it's with ourselves. And that's when I feel like we get really driven from that masculine side of ourselves, but not in a powerful, aligned way. It's where we play out the toxic side of our fathers, in the sense of what we saw, that driven masculine. You know, my dad used to say to me, don't be, you know, you have to be independent, you have to be this, you know, he put a lot of rules on me not being probably vulnerable, because the way my dad played vulnerable women, you know, in his past, it was a pushover for him. Do you know what I mean? He didn't want me to be a pushover. And then when as an adult, like, he saw his child, and his way to protect his daughter from someone like him probably was be independent, be this, be that. And it's funny how we then perceive, but see, I perceived that I wasn't good enough because he was telling me something that I wasn't, because I was emotional and I was vulnerable, and, you know, these are the things that you would have perceived. And then we hide probably the deepest feminine part of us because it wasn't fulfilled. And then when we get to that teenage sort of side, that's when I think we recognize ourselves around our peer group. We've sort of come from probably an unprotected, unsafe family, and then move out not feeling good enough anyway. So then we just keep validating these perceptions of ourselves on our peer group. So it's so funny that it was this specific type of woman too. And the way that you perceived yourself in reflection to her, or what was perceived to be perfect in your eyes.
And she really was the epitome of perfect in my eyes. So then I made the decision, like, well, if that's what everyone wants, if that's what men want, that's what women want, that's what everyone wants, well then how am I supposed to survive in life by getting any attention or getting any love? So then I was like, okay, well, I've made the decision that I need to be really fucking nice. I have to have a really good fucking personality. Like, I have to be funny. Like, otherwise, I'm not going to get the attention. I'm not going to get the love, and I'm not going to get what I deserve or any value from anyone. So,
did you think you learnt that as a teenager, or do you think that was something ingrained as a younger version of yourself?
So I think I really learnt that through school, through her, like through my peer group. But there would have been elements in my childhood where, you know, people, like, for example, my dad would notice a very beautiful woman. So I would, you know, I didn't think of anything of it back then, but you know, he would always notice a beautiful woman. So when I'm with him, like, you just naturally notice because he's noticing as well.
Where his attention is gone. And like, what that feels like.
Because like he would be talking to me or something like that, and then his attention would be gone, and then I'd be like, hey, hang on, you were just talking to me. Like,
so that's so interesting when you talk about it, and that really that scenario does kind of explain that. Where's obviously, if you like Dean, well, there must have been something that their attention was taken somewhere else.
And that really hurt in that moment. And so that's when I decided, okay, well, I really need to be a really good friend. I need to be a really good person. I need to be funny. So like, there's so many things. And it's like, you know, that was the coping mechanism, was then it turned into that people pleasing, the perfectionist, you know, the best, you got to be the best friend or the best well later on down.
That over giving empath side of you, which I relate to really well, that you feel obligated to be that support system, that person that's there and can hold their hand, because when you're needed that way, then people lean on you, and you feel validated for people wanting to lean on you. little did you know that there's really lack of boundaries in the sense that,
yeah.
as you learn, as you get older, because you're like, hold on, how come I keep getting left and how come,
Yeah. 100%. And I really felt valued in that. And that was really important to me, is that, to be needed meant that I felt valued. But, that was my perception as a 12-year-old. And then moving into teenage years and stuff like that, just carried that on until my first partner, boyfriend, who I met in year 9, so it would have been 14. And then it all morphed from the best friend, you got to be the best friend, into you've got to be the best partner.
Yeah.
And I will never forget this. He said specifically, and it fully validated my fears.
Don't you love that? The universe is so good at going, hello, are you looking at this?
And I remember at the time it really hurt, but it was a moment in time that the universe sent to me to sort of give me a nudge to be like, see, like, this is not where your value's at. But what he said to me was, he's like, at first I didn't think you were that hot, but I got to know you and I fell in love with your personality.
Oh, see, there you go. Validated.
And I was like, oh.
Yeah. But isn't it funny, because probably deeply you wanted to be loved for what you look like, or for all of you, really.
Yeah.
But because that was something you felt you lacked in, even though you've worked really hard on the personality side of you, like, but why aren't I good enough looking? You know what I mean? It's sort of like, it's interesting how our deepest fears are so validated, because that's what we're attracting to us in our life. And until we really recognize that, we just feel like life is just happening to us.
Yeah.
And we have no awareness of it, and we're rolling along, and it just keeps going, of course, I'm not good enough, and when you actually recognize, we call it in rebirthing your personal lie, which we did together. And then we go deeper to our birth trauma, which is another belief system. So we hold those belief systems so deeply, which we're getting to that. I know we're unraveling to that, but it's so interesting how that energy that we hold so deeply, even from the moment we landed here, through everything that we've perceived from that, especially that 0 to 7 time, which is really when we're in our subconscious, which is what, both of us work with, how we play that out so perfectly in our relationships. And that's why I just think relationships are so important in reflection of how we really get to grow and perceive ourselves, because we can keep going along, and if we're not relating, we're still perceiving these really deep things about ourselves with no knowledge that it's not necessarily the truth.
Yeah.
And it keeps us totally separated from the world, which is the design plan to, protect ourselves, because we're wired, our nervous system is wired, our mind thinks these things. And what do? Bring the same thing in everyone.
Yeah.
Perfect. This nice boyfriend. You've got such a great personality. Gee, thanks, mate.
Yeah, I know. And it was because of those lenses. And when I talk to my clients, I always talk about the lenses. So, I was looking through the lens of, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not good enough. But in that moment, if I wasn't looking through those lenses, I wouldn't have seen that as such an impactful comment.
Yeah.
But it was because I had those fears, deep fears, that when he said those words to me, I was just like, I kind of was like, it's kind of like a compliment, but it's also like a smack in the
It's kind of like a stab in the heart as well as a compliment, because I know I've been working really hard at this, but that's the opposite to what I wanted to feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now I look back and I'm like, wow, it's such a beautiful thing for him to say, because he really did recognize me for my personality. And now that I've done...
for the depth of you.
Yeah, for the depth of me.
Yeah, which is, I think, so much more valuable than, because obviously, especially now, like for me being midlife, it's like, well, that's all going to change. It's still going to go somewhere. And, I remember even being back at that age and having nothing when I was modeling. It was like nothing moved, everything was perfect. And then going through all these health things earlier on, and then having to let go of a lot of what I valued as well. Like for me, it was like being perfect and to be good enough, and, everything had to be a certain way. And it literally would unravel me, because I was the same. It was like I never felt good enough. And I was still like doing things like putting myself out there modeling and still deeply felt inadequate.
Yeah.
And the same for me, like even in a lot of the modeling days, I would get, it would be out of like 2 people for the job. Of course, I wasn't good enough. So I was pipped at the post. And then it would validate that, you know, and some of the comments and things that really did come from that. But I know that deep-seated belief of not enoughness and having to be perfect and being loved for that was definitely a mother trait.
Yeah.
You know, and we know that through, we don't both work a lot with that ancestral lineage, and I know you do with your clients, and especially as you come into motherhood, you see that play out so perfectly through your children, through birth, through even being a mother.
Yes.
It does. It goes from like the teenage thing to like not being pretty enough to not being a good, you know, we've got these pressures all the time that as women we're like literally in competition to how perfect we can be in a societal way, not, which then to me kicks back into that doing part of us, having to be better, do better, not like you said, what this first boyfriend recognized you for, or what you really are, what you're being, you know what I mean? Which is the most beautiful part of us, is the being part of us.
Yes.
But we are so conditioned to be in the doing part, which is that I think the masculine part of us is really, really important.
Yes.
But I think the way we have been driven as women, especially from little girls, from our mums, which we both very similar backgrounds, it's very toxic and overdoing. You know, like you said with the people-pleasing stuff. It's so over because we not only feel it deeply within our body, we feel everyone else's stuff as well.
Yeah.
And we're super sensitive. So it becomes an obligation and a responsibility.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's that, for both of us went, oh.
We're like,
and that heaviness of that.
Yeah.
And, you know, even someone said, you said that word that he said to you, that, you know, how one word can trigger that chord. I've been doing this work for a really long time. And someone said to me through conversation, it was just a relationship type conversation, but they said, oh, yeah, and it was getting so dramatic.
Oh.
And that was something my mum used to say to me all of the time because I was so emotional and because I was so sensitive. And when he said it, I went, ooh.
Yeah.
And it really freaking cut.
Yeah.
It hurt so deeply. He wouldn't have meant anything to him. But in the context that it was, like we said, drawing something, this obviously was still sitting there. And I recognized also too that I had called Tyler dramatic the day before, which is my son.
Yeah.
He's super emotional, super sensitive, and he was doing really hard work. And I went, oh, don't be so dramatic. And it really just kind of went bang, bang, bang. I went, oh, my gosh.
Yes.
I'm setting this kid up to feel the same way when he expresses his uncomfortableness in his emotion that he's dramatic.
Yeah.
Or when he's expressing him, and I wasn't expressing myself in a reactive way. I was expressing myself very clearly, very precisely, which I think sometimes then if you're not emotionally able to feel that or you react to it, then it's dramatic.
Yes.
And I think we get portrayed as dramatic when we either are too emotional or you become emotionally aware and available, and then that still can be dramatic because it's perceived as confrontational in a way because their reaction to it isn't comfortable.
Yes, exactly. And it's very interesting that you brought up just that, you know, that one word as you said it, because when I'm working with my clients, when we're in doing the inner child work, there's different aspects. They call them aspects. Different aspects within a memory that we store and trap when we have a traumatic experience. So that can be belief systems, that can be words, that can be smells. Drinking alcohol, it can be the toxicity within your body. There's so many different aspects. So it's really funny that you say that just that one word can make it trigger that sort of response system in you, because it is essentially bringing up that sensation of what you experienced in that moment when your mum said that, and you felt so deeply about that you had that traumatic response. like the traumatic response doesn't have to be a big trauma situation. It's something that can be repetitive, and most of the time in relational trauma it is repetitive stuff, like hearing certain sayings or words or judgments or criticisms. So even though that word is just one word that sounds insignificant to somebody else, just be aware that sometimes those one words or those looks, those facial expressions that people pull can be a trigger for you and 100%. Can actually lead you back, like you said, through.
Well, it's like a cord that goes back to a moment in time, which you have then a need that wasn't met.
Yes.
And it's deeply triggered at that time because it makes you feel the same emotion that wasn't met at that moment. Yes. And, you know, I always talk about it. It's like our feeling, if we don't really know how to feel, and most of us were never held through those big emotions all the way through them.
Yeah.
They were cut short, go to your room, you know, you're too sensitive, you're too dramatic.
Yeah.
You know, it's straight away we learn, like you said, ways of coping, and we suppress that.
Yeah.
That's how we lock that away. And that, like you said, that word just triggered that for me. And that moment in time, I know it so well, but it was more not being met. And it was more feeling very vulnerable and exposed for this instance as an adult that I'd been sharing really openly, and then to be sort of, obviously it was his reaction wasn't really what I was doing. I know it triggered him, and so it was kind of like I need to shut this down because it's not where I want to go. Yeah, don't be you because it's making me feel uncomfortable and I don't really want to go there within myself. So let's just call that dramatic and let's just finish it there. Okay, no worries. I've learned that very well now that it's not me, and that's something that I do. And I know in those moments I was triggering my mum.
Yes.
And so I would have perceived myself when she was saying I was dramatic, which exactly what Tyler was doing to me. So it's like, come on, dude, just go to bed.
Yeah.
And it was like, and I know he just needed more and more, and I was to the end of my more.
Yes.
You know, and we know that as mothers. And it's being very present in that moment. And I actually apologized to him. And I said to him, you know how I said that you were being dramatic last night? I just wanted to take that back because that's something that I've been told. And I'm always someone with the boys that I will even go back, even if it doesn't make sense to them, because it makes sense to me to explain that they weren't being dramatic. It was my reaction because I was tired.
Yes.
Or I will explain why I have reacted or perceived a situation a certain way, because I don't want them or that to imprint, like, you know, with what you work, in that moment in time, that every time they do that, if I say the same thing over again, then I'm just repeating the pattern.
Yes.
And it's really because it's an internal thing for me because I was tired. Yeah. And I recognize that it would have been exactly the same for my mum, because my mum did not like emotion.
Yes.
And she liked everything to be perfect. And I was messy.
Yeah.
I was a sensitive, messy, open, you know, emotionally demanding from the day I got here. She even told me that. You were dramatic from the day we got here. We both nearly died.
Yes.
So I've known from birth, we both nearly died. I was dramatic from the moment I got here.
Yeah.
And that just kept going for me.
Yeah.
You know, my mum was always like, oh, Jesus, you know. And she even said to me, it was a really random comment. That's so funny that this has come up. She said to me, it wasn't long before she died, actually. It was like probably about a year or so before. She said, she looked at me she said, I don't know how I birthed you.
Wow.
And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I just don't know how someone like you came through me.
Wow.
She was looking at me like I was like an alien, literally. And she said, you're just such a weird, like, I could just see her just going, I don't know how how are we related?
Yeah.
You know, how are you through me? Like, you are so complex and deep, and it was, but that comment to come from your mum was such a my mum was very random in her comments.
Yeah.
But it was funnily enough when I watched her dying, and all boundaries were down then.
Yeah.
All beliefs, we worked through a lot of stuff together. And I watched her in the hospital. She was the one dying, and she had the physiotherapist in tears. Yeah. Because she was helping her with her life.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, so we're not that much different. No. It's just that you didn't want to go there.
And now so close to the end, she's unraveling into that.
She could just be who she was.
Yeah.
It's like once we let her go, in the sense, and we don't have this idea of who we need to be for everybody else. And that was one big thing I learned about death and dying and really life, is that we're so busy being everything for everybody else, like you were talking about with the people pleasing and the personality and the ways that we've created to cope with life. That is the forefront. No one gets the dramatic part of us,
No.
you know, the depth of us in the sense, because it was so shut down. And so we hide it behind these person. And so to watch my mum at the end, where she really like, take me as I am, because I got nothing else, but this is it for me. So I can't be there for everybody else. So I've just got to learn how to let go of life.
Yeah.
To be exactly who I'm meant to be. And I watched her and I'm like, you freaking me.
Yeah. So and you hear it so often, like when people are, you know, confronted with a near death experience, or, you know, they get these diseases that, you know, potentially could be life-threatening. You hear so many times that people like unravel and start to become their authentic self, because they're like, oh shit, like I've been literally like living a lie and holding on to all this pressure from being someone who I think I'm meant to be in order to gain the love and attention and validation and approval and value and belonging. You know, love and belonging and acceptance is like what we're all here to, what we're intrinsically driven to feel, you know, and that's what connects us. And so you hear so often about these people who go through these like intense, crazy, chronic periods of ill health, and they come out the other side a completely changed person.
Health has been a massive, relationships and health. Health was really stopping me from my toxic masculine traits of driving the shit out of myself till I literally was in burnout. Which I think is very common for
people pleasers
and perfectionists.
Very common.
With very high standards on themselves that they needed to get somewhere. And I always knew I knew there was a bigger purpose for me. I've always known that. But I was driving myself to it. But nearly to death. You know, and when we play that out and we can stand back and observe it, and like you're talking about observing yourself in all those moments and going, I recognize that was very impactful. I recognize that was impactful. We don't have to wait till we die.
No.
To be truly who we are.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing. I feel like we're always birthing ourselves and dying in many, many moments. And sometimes, you know, it feels like over and over and over this rebirth and death. And if we're not fearing it, and we can let go of these old versions of ourselves that have been so programmed, so manipulated, so untruthful, but our body and our mind has done such a great job to get us to here. Unraveling that is a death.
Yes, it is.
Freaking scary.
It is. Yeah. And then that's the fear, is like we all, if we're not aware of it, we all fear death to some degree.
100%.
And if we can't work through that fear of death, which happens for a woman all the time, every time we have a period, we go through a death and a rebirth.
Yeah, true.
You know, like even if you look at the cycle of the day, there's a birth and a death of the day. Like we are going through mini cycles of death and rebirth every single day, yet we fear the death at the end of life because we perceive it as to be final, you know. And I truly believe that is not the end for us. I believe that that's just a transition into the next form of life. So I've really had to do a lot of work around my own fear of death, and it pops up in every now and then. Like I can see it when it does. But, you know, I used to go along to funerals and just bawl my eyes out, and it was just like, you know, that sort of that fear of death. Oh my God, it's so scary and it's so sad.
Death actually triggers your own death urge.
Yes.
And especially I noticed even in my family, and I noticed it in myself after Mum died, that innate having to sort of reclaim all the parts of myself that did fear death, and to look death in the eye of all the parts of me that really feared life. It's around fear. I think we're wired to fear living.
Yes.
Because then we're never really living.
Yeah.
We're kind of half dying.
Yeah.
And really weirdly enough, that is actually my birth trauma.
Yeah.
If I'm fully alive, I'm going to die. And you don't know how many kind of, not necessarily near death, but my health issues have kept me half living.
Yes.
My relationships kept me half lit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I was so overgiving, people please. You know what I mean? It's like I was dimming who I was, but forcing life so much when I was younger that I nearly died every time.
Yeah.
And I've nearly died in a lot of my violent relationships. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I remember being in a relationship and I was in Japan and the partner I was with at the time was having a moment. No one ever knew the extreme of the relationship we're in because I was very protective and I was, you know, super hyper independent, very efficient, didn't tell anyone all that. You know, even though
had to look a certain way.
Not that I hid anything, I just didn't tell everyone because I'd cope with it.
Yeah.
Because I deeply understood what he was going through. Of course I did. But in abandonment of my own self. But I remember laying in Japan one night and I was like, holy shit, he's going to kill me. It came over me and I was like, it was like this, if you don't leave, you will die. Is this way? And it was like someone telling me this.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a very powerful moment of like, are you going to choose to live or are you going to choose to die in this moment? But I really didn't want to be alone.
Yeah.
Because I'd felt alone my whole entire life.
Yeah.
Not that he understood me because he left me. He was constantly abandoning me all the time through the relationship.
Yes.
But I was also abandoning myself, wondering why I was feeling so alone.
Yes, I could definitely resonate with that one.
And I think, you know, we're taught as women to abandon ourselves.
Yeah, 100%.
We're wired for that through our lineage, through how the patriarchy has established women. And then we drive from such a masculine sort of way that has never served us as women, you know, and I think about even understanding myself as a woman, like you were talking about, you know, going back to that period. My mum never told me anything.
No.
It was like sort of shameful. And I didn't tell my mum. I got mine a bit later, but I never told my mum.
Yeah.
There was never really an open space or conversation to have those conversations.
Yeah. No,
because
I didn't have that
it was
either.
just, you just never talked about anything vulnerable.
Yeah.
Especially about being a woman.
Yeah, well, I realised that that I have a couple of family traditions that have been passed down generationally. Yes, because I've been doing a lot of work into, and I'm very passionate about changing the generational pattern with my son. And so in order for me to understand what I'm potentially passing on to him, I started to look at, you know, the things that I formulated in this lifetime, e.g. the what we just talked about with the decisions I made in reflection to that best friend of mine. But then also the belief systems that my family has carried for generations and the patternings of what they've carried. And, you know, emotions equals weakness. My mum even said that to me one day after I did a Matrix session on her. Like,
Isn't it so interesting?
Yeah, her mother never told her children that she loved them until my mum lost her sister, and when her sister was 50, and I would have been 19, so that's a long time ago. I'm not going to do the math. I'm not very good. My husband's not here. Dino! He's a mathematician. Yeah, so, you know, that's a long time ago, you know, but in comparison to their lifetime, I think my mum was like, you know, late 40s when she first heard that her mother loved her. Like, that was the first time that she'd ever been told it, was on her sister's funeral. And I was just like, what the fuck?
I know.
Like, that I do, like...
It's like that non-emotion or that non-expression of it was all internalized going on.
Yeah.
But there was just this kind of way you showed up.
Yeah.
And the way that you just save face and you didn't express your dirty laundry, I suppose.
No.
But I think that came from the generation before. So our mothers just were really unprepared emotionally at all.
Yeah.
And just kind of slotted into what, you know, everything was, you know, family, kids, husband, you stay at home. It I was actually thinking about it the day, and I was listening to something, and they said it was only 50 years ago that a woman could have a credit card.
Wow.
So we've been really limited anyway financially, and I know being a single mum, and you've had a small experience of it.
Yeah.
It's not set up for a woman to have children, to be present, to be supported, to raise children
Yes.
by themselves.
Yeah.
And a lot of people stay.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people stay till the kids finish school.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't prepared to do. And it wasn't that I had a bad relationship with my ex-husband. We were great friends, but I had done so much deep work after the boys. And like you were saying with your son, I didn't want them to think that was a relationship,
Yeah.
a friendship.
Yeah.
I needed more, and I wanted them to see more.
Yes.
And my life, when I became a mother, and I knew this would always be a pivotal moment, was I'm their guide, and if it's not through my action, then how are they going to know?
Yeah.
And I think that's made me really observe myself so deeply and unravel everything even more than I had before the boys, because I knew this back when I was 17, because I had a conversation with my dad saying, I haven't even started on my journey yet because I'm still unraveling yours and mum's stuff.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to be my father and love me for the emotional woman that I am, don't be in my life.
Yeah.
I haven't even started on my stuff. My dad was like, well, I just read this book called Fathers and Their Daughters. And so I'm actually going to interview my dad one day.
Yes, that would be awesome.
I had a conversation with him the other day, and I thought, I want people to see how you can evolve from a relationship that was never perfect as a child, but through communication. And we're quite fiery together. And funnily enough, we're two cancers, which is water.
Yeah.
But together we wanted to be right.
Yes.
And we talk about this a lot. Mm-hmm. You can't be right and there be love.
Yes.
So, choosing. But then I think sometimes there has to be a parent, there has to be a child.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think the parent has to be the one to take the responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's only been recently that even Dad said to me the other day, he goes, I always thought you sort of over-parented and it was a bit much.
Yeah, yeah.
But now when I see what
the product is.
And I can see how you really understand the boys and the way that they're navigating the world and the growing up.
Yeah.
It hasn't been too much.
Yeah, that's such a testament.
And I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why sometimes we have to move forward even when somebody doesn't understand us.
Yeah.
And no one's understood me most of my life. So fucked if I'm waiting around now for someone to understand me. Literally anyone. Yeah. I've got to that point that I've done so much work within me, and I know you're the same. It's like, well, I don't want to stop this. This is so much bigger than me. I can't slow this down for anyone now.
Yeah, yeah.
And something's happened, especially since I became 52, I think. And it's just like propelled again. But I think that's the energy of everything that we're all going through. But I know you feel the same right now, that there's something so much bigger. And being a mother, and I think mothers are so unappreciated to just how much impact that creates when they're nurtured and loved and protected spiritually and emotionally.
Yes.
Especially that 0 to 6. And that to me was so important that they had me. Yeah. And it's funny, I laugh about this, and I think I might have told you, my oldest son said, we went to a mother-son thing, and he said to me, he had to share what your favourite thing about your mum was. And he goes, I told everyone that you're persistent. I went, what the fuck? I was like, that's not cool. And he's like, no, persistent, mum. That's the best thing you could ever be, is persistent. So it's funny how we have a perception of a word. Yes. Because I'm thinking persistence. He goes, you never give up on me. You show up to everything we do. And even when I don't want to feel something, you follow me all the way in and you never let me down and you love me no matter what.
That's so beautiful.
And he goes, so persistence, one of the best words or best things to be, mum. And I went, oh, okay.
Oh, that's so sweet.
So you had these moments with your son.
It's such a testament to, Yeah, when you do want to parent in that very conscious and loving and connected way, it's a lot.
Oh, it's
and
challenging.
So it is, especially when, they're your greatest teacher and they're mirroring back to you your deepest wounds. So at the same time, whilst you're trying to be a mother, you're trying to understand your child, you're trying to be conscious about how you parent, and you're mindful that how you parent in this moment right here
and understand your own inner child.
yeah. And then how you act with them right now shapes their lifetime, because they're in that 0 to 7 years of programming state. And so, yeah, and then you also have to need to recognize your inner child inside of you in those moments when you are having those reactions to whatever it is that they're doing. And so it's a lot of work, but I mean, it's when you have a deep passion and a deep desire and a purpose to change the generational pattern, it's not a choice. It's just what you do. And there's many of times that I make mistakes as well. And like you said,
it's not about being perfect though.
It's not.
It's the complete opposite about being perfect.
And what I was about to say was like how you apologize to your children. I do the same thing. Any time that I, have an emotional outburst or something like that, I always wait until it's all cooled down. We're all cooled down. And then when we're cooled down, I go in for connection. And then I explain to him, look, I'm really sorry, baby. Mummy got really upset in that moment and I was feeling really frustrated. And this is why. And it's not like I go in and tell him a big story about it because he's still too young to understand that. But I just say, this is why, because Mummy's feeling tired, or, like Mummy just wanted to do this one thing and that was interfering, and I'm sorry if that hurt your feelings. And now I heard what the roll-on effect is from your story, and it makes me just sink into myself and go, even though I already know it's the right thing for me, just makes me feel like, oh yeah.
But I mean, you even know as a child how personal you take everything, because you have no other perception.
No.
So you always, and then as we get older, we still will take it personally.
Yeah.
And then unless we can sort of sit back and observe ourselves in relationship,
then
we then grow up in relationship and take things personally.
100%.
And so then we can never create the deeper bonds and connection that we're totally desiring.
No.
Because we want to be right and we take everything personally and we're in protection.
Yes.
So unless we can really sit back and, observe this, and then, like you said, that's to me the greatest gift we can give to our children is the work that we're doing for ourselves.
100%.
Because when they can see we're human and they can see that we don't have it right and we don't have it all together and we don't have it all figured out, but we can guide them and be persistent and show them through our experience, then I think they have such a better guide within themselves to navigate life. Not from an external point of view, but really deeply internal, because they're connected to that. Yeah. Because they haven't had to really create huge ways to cope in the sense of creating someone that they're not. Yeah. And I think that's been the biggest part of my life, is unraveling who I'm not, unraveling the untruths. And I'm not saying that my kids aren't going to have to unravel stuff, but they've definitely got a massive place within me to sit and go, hey, by the way, you're a dick, or you did this to me, and I go, okay, well, let's sit with that. I want to talk about it. Yeah. This is where I was at, and it was never my intention. How can I support you through that? Yeah. And I'll always own my part. I'm big on owning my part.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's something I think has been a great thing, even in my relationship with my dad, to watch him he used to get so pissed when my sister and I go, no, you abandoned us. He's like, no, well, I do, and we're like, but now he can reflect on it and he goes, I really realize how much it did impact you. Yes. And now I can see it differently, because I'm like 80 and now unraveling this stuff within myself and seeing these things as I'm getting older, that I do have to really change. Yeah, 100%. Because I can't get closer. He's just been lucky. He's had such a great guide with my stepmom.
Yeah. And I think like growing up with parents like our parents, when those times were when our emotions were too much for them. You know, in my household, like if my emotions were too much, you know, I'd either get smacked or I get sent to my room in isolation. And, you know, even if it was because mum was really angry and it had nothing really to do with me, it was just that my emotions were in response to her reactions or behaviors or whatever, there was no apology. There was no talking about it. And I love my parents so much, and I know that they were doing the best that they can with what they had. And I the way that they parented me has shaped me into the amazing person that I am here, right now. So I love them so much. And I'm not saying, you know, I'm not criticizing them. I'm not judging them. But the truth is that I never got that apology. And I really feel that because there was none of those hard, vulnerable conversations where they opened up and shared how they were feeling, I never got that blueprint of how to do that for myself. So then as I've gone through my life, you know, in relationships and things like that, I held everything in. I never told anybody how I felt and how they hurt me and all that sort of stuff, and just took everything personally and just trapped it all in, and was carrying around all this pressure and all this, you know, overwhelm, you know. And, you know, that when I was talking before about those generational patternings, like I see that I was just repeating what my mother was doing, and then she was just repeating what her mother was doing, and then the common emotion towards men was resentment. And I could see the resentment play out with my nan and pop when I'd go to their house. Oh, it was intense. The energy was hectic. And then I could see the resentment playing out with my mum and dad.
How could we not play the same performance?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. We are not authentic. Well, I will say this, I'll continue. We are not authentic when we are programmed, because we are programmed off our parents, what we are witnessing. So in a sense, the reason why we have so much conflict in our life with ourselves is because our conscious mind has now come on board, and our conscious mind holds all our desires and what we want for ourselves and how we want to experience the world and all those types of things. However, our subconscious programming, because it's so bloody powerful and it's been imprinted in those years, and it's designed to keep us safe and protected, we're having conflict with both brains.
Conflict before we even relate to anyone else.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like relating to ourselves is the conflict.
That's it. And that's what I mean, is that like we're not our full authentic selves when we're children, because, well, I mean, we are, in the sense of how we play and we create and we love.
But slowly that gets taken away.
That's exactly
through the
right.
expectations of others.
Yes.
And the expectations of others is, you need to make me feel comfortable.
Yes.
So you need to change.
Yes, exactly. And so then we're walking around with this energy, and even with this ancestral stuff and this generational stuff, even though the behavior may have been down the line and the mother didn't carry that, the energy is still there.
100%.
And so you can still, exactly. It's programmed into your cells and your DNA. So even if your mother didn't display that, you still are susceptible to those types of emotions or behaviors or anything like that, because of the energetics of it all.
And it would still come through the relationship with your mum on some level.
Yes.
Energetically.
Yes.
And you would perceive that the way she expressed it would have just been different through her personality.
Yes.
But it's the same way. Like, we all carry a lot of the same not enoughness, not worthiness, not lovable, but we express it differently.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing. So when we can truly understand ourselves and how we feel, then we can meet our own needs. And when we can understand that and balance ourselves out and truly serve ourselves in the sense what we need, then we're so much clearer in relationship to other people.
100%.
And I don't even think that's setting boundaries to protect us. It's setting boundaries to be clear with who you are and what you need.
Yes.
And if that's not something that you can, in a sense, reciprocate, then I'm okay with that. I love you anyway, but I'm not going to be in this relationship anymore.
Yeah.
Such a different place to relate from.
Yes, 100%.
I love you, but I'm going to leave. That was me. I'll love you and I'll stay and I'll give you my heart and soul until you destroy me and then I will leave. Oh, that's just nowhere near that. You know, that was such a younger version of myself, but she just had no self-worth. And the desperation not to be alone was so much more.
Yeah.
Thinking that she needed someone to be with.
Yeah.
And now I freaking love being alone.
Yeah.
Even though I've got kids, it's like my hermit time. Everyone, just not really. I either want this.
Yes.
This real conversation, the depth and the honesty. And what I love about you and how I feel we relate, and even now that we've started working together, that we are so clear.
Yeah.
We are so honest. And I can share anything with you and you don't take it personally.
Yeah.
And even if you do, you'll go, okay, well, great. So how can we work with that and what do you need?
Yeah.
And I'm the same. And there's never a judgment on like, how come you haven't done this? It's not a tit for tat. Because I know when you're going through something, you know when I'm going through something. And so there's this kind of like, okay, there's a
pendulum.
Yeah. I'll jump in here and while you're out there. And then when you come in and I'm out there, it's like, it's this kind of, to me, a very synergistic way to work together.
Yes.
And I have such deep respect for you. And it is. It's just, it's so beautiful to get to the stage that you can walk alongside women especially, but men and women and relate so beautifully and respectfully and you feel loved and accepted even in all the fucking chaos that can happen.
Yes.
And there was a lot this morning before we started this, you know, and I don't feel judged one bit.
Yeah.
It's like, cool, just come in, you know.
Yeah.
And I hope that I do the same for you.
Oh, absolutely. Like, absolutely. I just feel like so honored to be in your life. And I know that you were like, we have soul contracts. And I know that. Yeah, I know that. I didn't just stumble on you like out of, you know, coincidence. It was
and you would never have trusted me, I know, to the depth that you allowed me to take you. If you didn't. And that's what I really witnessed with you, is that you were willing to go to the depth of yourself and you went, I know you can hold me. And that's really why I do the work that I do and have gone to the depths of myself, not only for my children and for myself, but to guide others. And that's why I know that you're the same, and that's why I love the way we work. And we might even wrap it up on the way that of going back to that, because the way we do work together to me is really powerful.
Yes.
And what we bring to the table and how real and raw we can be.
Yeah.
And as you can see, we love a chat.
Yes.
We try not to go deep, but we can't help it. But we can go on so many tangents. But the depth of it is that we both have always longed to be heard, seen and loved. And I feel that in our relationship and what we bring to the table is a safe place for that.
Yeah. And I think that you are, like, out of everybody that I've met in my whole entire life, I feel so deeply seen, heard and loved specifically from you. And that's something that I can't say about many people in this lifetime yet. So thank you for seeing me. Thank you for holding me. Thank you for being such a support and such a loving, compassionate soul and teacher and friend. I'm so grateful for you. And I'm so honored that we get to work together and share this depth of us with others that are ready to see the depth of themselves.
100%. And I love, we've got, if you don't already know, Dannie and I have started Soul Sync together, which is a combination of yin yoga, cacao and breath work, which we have some great conversations in that as well. But the conversation that I want to lead into is kind of a spin-off of what we've started here with Spill the SpiritualiTEA, is the spirituality ladies' luncheons. Well, not luncheons. I would say they're going to be herbal high teas.
Yes.
And I had this concept before, and I really want to be able to bring women together to have these deep conversations, real conversations, because I think we've lost that honest vulnerability through lineages to be able to be honest of how to find the depth of ourselves in a feminine but balanced masculine way. I don't think it's just about being feminine, because I think that's a beautiful way to manifest and nurture and deeply meet yourself. But I do think there has to be action, and that's powerful, and that's clear, and it really gives presence to the femininity that we're trying to bring to the world, which I think is what is going to heal the world. And I think women need to know and sit in circle and sit in groups and come together and unite to bring that together.
100%. It's the way, there's such a power in community, and there's such a power in community that has the same intention.
Yeah.
And so if, we can bring that community and that intention and those souls who are drawn to that and want to be a part of that, it is really going to have massive ripple effects on the world. And it is about that balance. It is about, balancing the masculine and feminine. And as, we all know, we all have both of that inside of us. So, and it's all about the balance. And so when we can bring that balance into life.
In alignment.
Yeah. And into an alignment, we can just be a human being instead of the human doing and creating so much stress and chaos and all this.
And I want it to be a place that women can finally let go of this competition.
Yes.
You were going to say that.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Like, let go of the competition. Let go of the need to be perfect around each other. Let go of, like, this facade and the masks that we place upon ourselves, because it is a survival tactic. And yes, it has worked for so long, but the community that we want to create with that spirituality and these high tea events that we get together is like letting all that go. Like we want real, authentic connection where you can come feel seen, loved and heard by two women who are doing that with each other but want to share it with the world.
100%. And I think too, it's not a perfect journey, and it's messy and it's deep, and it's not meant to be totally understood till it is.
Yeah.
But when you can get to this space of real showing up for yourself, and then to have other people to support you in that mission. And I want these teas to be that. I want it to be kind of a rising of real and raw conversations like we are here.
Yeah.
And like what I want to do with this podcast, to bring community and connection together with women to see each other.
Yeah.
And to bring people into their space that can support them lovingly, and we can all guide each other in a sense.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to that. We've got our first one on, is it October the 5th?
Saturday, October the 5th,
Yes.
I believe. Yeah.
And we're doing that up at Balance Lane. It's going to be at Herbal High Tea. Probably have a little bit of cacao.
Yes.
We'll have to do a bit of cacao. But it's really going to be about conversations, sharing tea, community, getting together physically, I think too is important. Connection.
In-person connection.
And we'll be obviously doing a few little micro techniques and things that people will be able to take home with them. But it's more really about connection and having real and raw conversations like we are here.
Yeah.
So people can really see themselves.
Yes.
And I always say this in my circles. When we share vulnerably, we get to see ourselves in each other, and we don't feel so alone.
Yes.
And I really want that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think both of us together are such a perfect combination to hold that safe place, to bring these kind of more casual things. So some people are a little bit intimidated to come to a big event or something deep, breath work or yin, and they feel a little uncomfortable with that. But to come to a herbal high tea where we're just casual chatting, I think that's a great way to open conversation and have these aha moments without maybe throwing yourself all the way in to start off with.
Yeah, exactly. And like people who come along to these events, I mean, you don't have to share, but you can listen. Like if this is something that sounds really intriguing to you, like you don't have to come and share.
No,
you can come and listen and just see others in you see your experience, in others' experience. And that can be really profoundly healing.
100%.
Because we are all mirror reflections of each other. And what is personal is also universal. So what I might be going through, although it's not lined up with the exact same events and circumstances as somebody else, there is the energy and the underlying story that is told is something that we can all relate to.
100%.
So it's not about you coming to this spirituality tea party.
It's a party.
It's like,
it's a tea party.
Yeah. To come and share.
No.
It's about getting in and just connecting, and we're all craving that connection, and just allowing yourself to sit with women and
when
not
like-minded
feel
women
unsafe.
come together in a powerful place that you feel safe, things change, shit happens.
Yeah.
And I want that to be something that ripples then into your relationship at home, into the way you parent, into feeling more empowered and connected to yourself. And I think that's what we both divinely want together, and then also what we bring indivially.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think we better leave it there, babes. Or we could talk for another hour. I think my microphone's gone down and down and down.
We could literally talk for hours. There's so much to cover.
So we'll have to probably have Dannie back, no doubt.
Yeah.
And if you are interested in the spirituality, I will be putting that up. So you will be able to buy tickets for that. It's a limited little space. But I think it's going to be intimate and powerful, and, you know, we're not going to be in lack of conversation. Babe.
No, it's going to be raw and vulnerable and amazing. It's going to be so incredible. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I cannot wait. Yay!
So thank you for being on my first episode of my podcast. I feel really honoured, babe. And we've got lots to do together. And I just feel really blessed to have you in my life. And thank you for sharing with my new community that's about to emerge.
Yes.
And I love working beside you, and you're a beautiful being.
Likewise, Mel. I love you so much. You are the greatest teacher that I've come across so far in my journey, and I seriously love and respect you so much. Thank you for being you, and thank you for stepping on my path. I love you,
my darling.
Thank you.